Hey, it's Larry Sharpe here at FreedomFest, having some amazing conversations talking about values and ethics and human respect. And I'm very lucky today to have with me Hannah Frankman. Hannah, please tell them about yourself.
Hey, I'm Hannah Frankman. I am the founder of renegadeEducator. I am an advocate for alternative education modalities beyond just public school.
Look at that, beyond just public school. I love that. Well, my worry becomes that you're speaking about that, is that the average person is going to say, schooling is critical, we got to educate people, we got to do it, it's really important. So we have to make sure that they have the right education. And if I want my education to be more conservative, well, I've got to use government to make sure that it's more conservative, because otherwise that'd be bad. Or if I want to be more liberal, more progressive, I've got to use government to make sure everyone gets it that way, right? So I'm going to use coercion in a way that I think is righteous because it's for kids. Right? I mean, that's a common problem, right? But I feel like you're going to tell me that's wrong.
Well, first of all, public schools in America are not doing a great job educating our kids, no matter what side of the aisle you're in.
I think that's true.
You look at the basic stats for, say, literacy rates. They're kind of shocking. 54% of American adults cannot read at a 6th grade level.
Wow.
The literacy in our country is abysmal.
Wow.
And 90% of American children currently are enrolled in the United States public school system.
Is that high, really? Wow.
90%.
Yeah.
And that number
it's not just New York State.
No, it's across the, I mean, it varies a little bit from state to state, but on a national level. And that number is decreasing.
Wow.
Because we have had a huge resurgence in public or private schools, rather, homeschooling, especially post-pandemic, when people had to leave the public school system anyway.
Right.
But so that number for most of these people who were reading at a under 6th grade level, most of them went through the public school system. The number was higher than 90% previously. So regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, the public school system is not doing a good job educating our children.
So I guess the reason why I bring this up is what you're saying, I think, is giving people more choices, more options to be available to alternatives, to your point, right? So then how in the world can we be sure, or maybe we don't need to be sure that people are actually getting educated? What I mean by that is, if I want the right thing, again, I want to say that again, my intent here is a good intent.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I'm not trying to be a bad guy. I want to be a good guy.
Yes.
And I care about the children, and we all care about the children, right? So I'm talking about the children, I have good intent, and you now want to put your kid into some alternative school, which, look, I don't know if it's a good school or not, I have no idea. So I now need to use some form of coercion, some form of violence or threat, or I gotta fine you or something like that. Otherwise, you won't teach the kids good, right? You won't do that. You won't learn the kids good, right? If I don't somehow do that. But because I'm doing that, is it wrong when my intent is good?
Yes, because the outcome isn't always good. There's a difference between intent and outcome.
Okay.
So I believe that most people have children's best intentions at heart. I think most teachers do. I think most administrators do. I'm very careful when I'm talking about this. Like, none of the individuals involved in the system are the bad guy. The problem is the system itself. Right. Because the system is this, frankly, outdated, very antiquated, very calcified, very bureaucratic, very top-heavy thing that's very hard to maneuver and turn as our culture changes and as our economic environment changes and as the professional world and the different trajectories that kids are being raised to go down are changing. It's very hard to adjust the system accordingly. Right. Even without, even if we weren't trying to change course because everything was going on same as it always was, again, you just look at the numbers. Like, even if you are worried about a child not getting a good education if they're going to an alternative program, they're already not getting a great education in the system as is. Okay, so there's a lot of room.
Let me touch that, please. You've said that the outcome is bad, right?
Not for every child.
Right, of course, but overall.
Yeah, overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if I could find data that showed the outcome of someone not being in public school is worse? Say, for example, I find an example of, say, some local community that's a community school, and bad things happened, or kids got sick, or kids couldn't read, something like that. There's all stories all around about that. Oh, these people, they didn't do this right or that right. Yeah. So now I can show data that says, see, your outcomes aren't so good either, Hannah. See, look at the outcomes here. They're also bad. If I could show that data, does that then make my coercion okay? Because now I have data on the outcomes, not just my intent, I also have outcomes. So now I should force you to go to public schools.
Well, now we're getting into a much more philosophical question that's not just about education. It's about coercion.
100%.
Which I am very against as a matter of moral principle. I think coercion is...
Okay.
I don't think that one adult should be coercing another adult to do something.
Got it. Okay.
And obviously it gets stickier when you start talking about children.
It does always.
But
That's why I'm glad you're here, because you're the kids now. So now I get to bug you because it's kids. That's right, yes.
But I don't think one parent should be able to coerce another parent with what to do with their children. And when you start to look into first of all, to your question about the data,
right.
The outcomes are not worse for homeschoolers or private school students. They're actually, most of the time, significantly better. You can talk to, people are always, one of the things that people always come back to as well, your kid's not going to get into a good college because they don't have the transcript from a local high school. Then you start talking to college professors, and across the board, everyone's like, oh, I love homeschoolers.
Yes.
They're my favorite.
100%.
So the data isn't there to make this claim. But even if it were, it still is, from a moral standpoint.
Got it, okay.
It is, the coercion thing is, we live in a world where there is, it depends on the state, but generally across the board, kids are legally required to go to school until they're about 16, depends again on the state, but legally required to attend school, and it varies on a state-by-state level what types of workarounds parents have to the public education system. So in some states, parents have to send their kid to public school, and they have a handful of other options, and they're not, it's not an environment that's very friendly towards educational entrepreneurship. I understand completely. Yes, you're in one of the worst states for this. Then there are states like Utah where it's like, go have fun, basically.
Right. And by the way, I still homeschooled my daughter for 2 years.
Amazing.
Even through all of that, yes.
Amazing.
So I know exactly how bad
was
it
that
is.
challenging for you?
It was insanely
Tell
challenging.
me more about that.
Yes, yes, it was challenging. We'll have a long conversation offline over this one. Yes, that'll be awesome. But to my point, that's kids.
Yeah.
And education is something you're obviously passionate about and know about. But then let me go someplace else if I could.
Yeah, please.
Let me go to something that maybe isn't about children educating, but let me go to someplace that is happening in the school systems. How about the ideas of deciding who should marry whom? Seriously. Again, my in this case, my intent is also good.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure that your children will be raised by the right parents, right? Your community will be better. Your family will be better. And if I'm religious, I'm going to save your soul. See how good I am? My intent is amazingly good. Is this okay? This is now state saying who can get married, not where your kids go to school or not. But now it's a state saying who can get married. And again, it's about community. I'm trying to make things better. My intent is good.
That's still not okay. You're coming from a place of good intent, and I respect that. I appreciate that you care.
Right.
But who said that your opinion of what's right outweighs my opinion of what's right?
Well, again, let's go back to the same thing. Let's say in this case I have data.
Yes.
And the data I have is, and I don't know if this is true at all, so for the sake of argument, my data is correct. I'm making this data up completely. But the data I find is, in states that have these laws against non-traditional marriage, there's a lower divorce rate. I don't know if that's true at all. I'm making that up completely. But in this fictitious argument I'm making, I have this data that shows, see, states that say, non-traditional marriage is bad, there's less divorces. See? So now I have data. So now I can show you I have data that this is true again. Does that change?
You're going to lose the well-being of the individuals for the sake of statistics.
Yes.
You're going to ignore the individuals and the well-being.
It's about community. Why are you selfish?
Because a community is just comprised of a number of individuals.
Ah, okay.
If you don't have the individuals, does the community even matter?
That's a good point. I like it. So you're saying that even in the case of the children, even in the case of the community, even no matter what I might be thinking, still you don't want to use coercion.
No.
Okay, so let's go one more level.
Okay.
Now it's law.
Okay.
Now it's sovereignty.
Okay.
We're now talking about immigration.
Okay.
So now we have people who come across the border, either they're undocumented workers or illegal immigrants, whatever title you want to use, but they are here.
Yes.
And they are working against the law. However you want to define them, your words, but that's what they're doing. Shouldn't I now use coercion against these businesses? Because now these people are breaking the law. That's true. Rule of law matters. Shouldn't I now punish these businesses? Now shouldn't I use coercion to make sure they're not hiring these immigrants? In fact, maybe even they're taking American jobs. Now isn't it okay?
So there's a distinction here between the community level of, as I understood your previous question, being we're talking about like a localized community, and you're trying to enforce who can marry who for the good of the community.
Yep.
Where no one is coerced to stay in that community.
Correct.
Because they can move to a community down the road that has completely different rules if they so choose, and
well, in
they're
theory,
not.
though, I could be trying to make this law for the entire country.
I see. Okay.
So I could be going that
level. For
level.
the sake of my argument, though, the last point we touched on, you were talking about a localized community.
Done.
Now you're talking about a national level.
I am.
Where there are already a level of coercions that we are being subjected to that we cannot escape. The morality of those coercions, different story. But we're all legally required to pay taxes.
Yep.
We're all legally required to contribute part of our labor to the sustaining of the system that we are born into, and we can choose to leave, but unless we put great effort into choosing to leave, it's very different to change countries as opposed to changing zip codes.
Sure.
We're enforced to participate, and we are enforced to pay into the system. Because someone is coming in to that system from the outside, I do think the conversation is slightly different, because slightly different rules apply. Because they are not of said system, and entering said system, the people who are already in said system should have some say in whether or not other people come join them. Whether or not, like what the stance on that is, that's different.
In this case,
yes, in this case,
the business owner, wants the people.
Wants the people,
right? The business owner saying, no, I want you in my system. He's like, no, come on in. He's ready to pay, and the people who are servicing, they're servicing. They're being customers. They're not complaining. So in this ecosystem, no one's complaining.
If no one's complaining,
but it's
then I don't see the problem.
It's against the law.
But no one's complaining in this scenario?
Well, yeah, they are, but no one in that ecosystem. Outsiders are complaining. Outsiders looking in and going, that's against the law. You may not do that. The police don't like it. The governor may not like it. The mayor may not like it. So people are complaining, but to your point, not in that ecosystem, they're not.
Okay, so I'm generally very anti-coercion across the board. I think coercion is wrong. I think it's ugly. I think it makes everyone's lives more uncomfortable. I think everybody should mind their own business.
So you think that, to my point, is you think that every time you use coercion, you are making somebody either more unhappy or less harmonious or less prosperous?
Often it's the last one. Often.
But at least one of those?
Yeah, usually. Not always, but often, yes.
So then now keep going. Now what were you saying about this system?
So generally speaking, I am against coercion. I think that it gets stickier to hold a strong, hard moral line against coercion when you already have layers of coercion that are being implemented.
So you're saying coercion versus coercion is okay?
No. I'm saying that the hard line of morale. So let me back up again and use the specifics of the example, because it's easier than talking in the abstract. So in the context of this example, where you have immigrants who've come in, they're working on, you said a business, I think, just as a generic business. Business owner is happy.
Let's say it's a restaurant.
Okay, they're working at a restaurant. Restaurant owner's happy. Restaurant is happy. Restaurant employees are happy, who are the illegal immigrants. The customers are happy.
They're happy.
And someone else in this town is unhappy.
Correct.
Because they see their rights as being infringed upon because they've worked very hard to be here, and these other people have come in illegally, and they say, well, we want these laws to be enforced. I think that's a stickier issue than some of the other ones that you've brought up, because there are more pieces at play.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think that both sides have an argument to make that, well, I want to be here and I belong here.
So let me walk down that road then.
Yeah, please.
I believe, I'm the mayor or the governor of that state, and I think, wait a minute, we have laws for a reason. So I'm going to start hammering those business owners. And I am going to fine them every day that we find bad guys, illegal guys on their payroll or in their place. We're going to fine them X dollars per week, and if they don't pay them, we'll put them in jail.
I think that's highly immoral.
Why not? You just said it's okay.
No, I didn't say it was okay. I wasn't finished with my argument yet.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going. Okay.
I do not support that.
You don't
personally.
Support that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't support that personally. However, I think that it's a harder thing to be black and white absolute. Like the other things are very easy for me to say. That is absolutely morally wrong.
Got it. Okay.
It is harder for me to say that is absolutely morally wrong on both sides, because there are more factors contributing to this. So what if these people are engaged in the economic ecosystem that everyone else is engaged in.
Right.
They're not subjected to all of the things that someone who's, paying taxes legally and has, Social Security and all these things are paying into. It's a complicated dynamic. And I understand, that's why this is such a sticky issue compared to some of the others. I still think it's abhorrent for a government to be fining people for...
So does that mean you would rather have a way to persuade those business owners to either not hire them, or persuade the people to not come here, or set up a system to where it's more fairer or something like that? Is that what you're saying? You'd rather do that?
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's the business owner's fault. And this is, I say with complete transparency that I am a business owner, but I don't employ, I employ U.S. citizens. I work in a sector where it hasn't really made much of a difference, or I employ people internationally.
Right.
This is not an issue that I have personal experience with, and it's a very nuanced thing. So my answer to this may change if I were in a situation where I was actually dealing with this up front in my own, real world's context. But yeah, I think that...
So I feel like what you're saying...
Rephrase the question, because I feel like I got off track a little bit.
No worries. I feel like what you're saying is, even though you feel kind of gray in that area, you still want to give everybody involved human respect.
Absolutely.
And you still want to say, look, I may disagree or not disagree, I don't know in this case, but I still would rather use persuasion and not coercion.
Yes.
Am I reading that correct or no?
Yeah, no, you're reading that correct. Across the board, I would always rather use persuasion rather than coercion.
So even in this case?
Yes, ideally.
Okay, so what I've got from our conversation so far is, if it's black and white to you, obviously no coercion. But when it's not black and white, you still don't want to use coercion.
I would prefer to live in a world where one was never being coerced to do anything.
There we
ideally.
go. So how I'm defining coercion is either force or threat, right? So violence or threat of violence, and theft or fraud. That's how I'm defining coercion. That's what I'm using, right? I'm either lying to you through fraud, stealing your stuff, threatening you, or acting violently. That is somehow my coercion, right? That's coercion. If we don't do that, if we avoid that, and we do, the other option is doing nothing or persuading. Every time we use coercion, we are by default removing human respect.
Yeah.
Because what winds up happening is we take those people and we make them those people.
We make them statistics.
Yes, we don't make them, to your point, community versus the individual, as you said, right? If it's a community, it's that community of those people. They're not really real, are they? Right?
No.
No, they're not. So we can just not respect them. If we want to coerce them, so what? They're the bad guys.
It's very easy to start coercing when you make people numbers, because numbers don't live and breathe and you can't feel empathy towards them.
Absolutely.
So it's very easy all of a sudden to do very inhumane things.
100%, just like that, all of a sudden. And that's why I focus so much on the idea of human respect. When you give each human respect, it's so much harder to use coercion. Now you've got to try to persuade them instead. It's a big difference. That's why I bring it up so often, right? The idea. So from what I'm hearing from you is, you already kind of agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Do you think it would make more sense in communicating to focus a bit more on the human respect aspect over some other things like what's right or wrong, or who's correct or who's false, but leading with human respect to people to go, oh no, now that you've heard it, we've talked about it, is that another way of talking or no?
Of course.
You do like that idea?
Well, yeah, there are many different mechanisms with which to communicate. Generally, when people are communicating, they have an outcome that they desire.
Right.
Generally, leading with some respect instead of accusations makes it more likely to get what you want when you're talking to somebody. So it's actually highly self-interested to be kind about the way you're communicating with someone else.
But I'm not even saying kind. Because what if you think you have to be more aggressive or more forward in your communication? What if you have to be a bit more aggressive or forward, but you just don't want to go to coercion? In other words, your level of communication may not be, hi, how are you? It might be, look, you can't do that. That's a human being.
I would still classify that as kindness.
Aggressive. You would still say that's kind.
Compared to, relatively obviously, but compared to being highly aggressive with somebody and coercive, of course that's kind in comparison.
Got it, okay.
You're granting someone respect. I think that's always an act of kindness, even if you're doing so in a way that is, I mean, obviously there's, nuance to this, but
sure.
But in the realm, on the plane within which we are dissecting this currently, I do think that classifies as an act of kindness to show someone respect.
I like that. So you're kind of saying that the fact that I'm not coercing someone is by default being kind, particularly if I don't agree with that person.
I think
if
so.
I think they're wrong in some way, shape, or form. I love it. I appreciate that. This has been a great conversation, Hannah. Thanks for giving me a couple of minutes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.